Regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen, today May 6, 2019. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes from our April 15th meeting. Minutes before you. Yes, ma'am.
One correction, motion with correction of my name from Makuta, please.
Okay. I'll second. Any discussion, any other? No? John had the same correction. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Anyone present to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Okay. If I seemed hurried and there are things that we don't need to elaborate on, it's item A. He has another presentation to make in another municipality, so we're trying to work on that. We can come back to anything. The next is a list of correspondence. You'll see a list in your packet. Many of the things on my status report we will talk about in the agenda. So that brings us to Public Works. Troy?
All right, a little update on the stairs. The state inspector came, they did fail, they were off in their measurements. So he's supposedly supposed to be here on Saturday, May 11th to jackhammer them out, and then he will pour them on Monday. The railing needs to be extended due to the state codes. So basically, hopefully, in another week or so, we will have steps that are usable.
I don't know if you have in your packet, but what John's looking at is when the state inspector came out, Rockwell had provided us with their own engineer's report. So we also have a copy of that to look at. It really, it says in words that they believed they were well within the code, but the numbers on them showed the opposite, and then that's reflected in the state report, the same thing. So frustrating as it may be, they haven't walked away from the project.
No. He said he was going to make, good for what he's done, so hopefully.
And if there's not a copy in your package, John, we can make you a copy of that before you leave.
Yeah, I don't have
so you can have both reports. Okay. You want to take a look at this one?
I'd love to.
Okay. I'm sorry, Troy, go ahead.
No problem. Another update, the parking lot will be striped here on Sunday, May 26th, weather permitting. If it rains, then obviously we have to push it off. He's going to do it on a weekend, so there's no one around. We're sweeping in town. We fixed the drainage issue on Red Oak Drive, and we fixed the parking lot over at the River Road, the complex over there. We replaced the pipe on Daleville School Road that one of the rainstorms had washed out, and then we replaced that last week. We've been cleaning waterways around town, and we hired a new landfill, a transfer station operator. He started on Sunday. Assistant operator, yep. And he's going for his class on Thursday, so hopefully everything works out with him. And then a little bit, Eric, I talked to you this morning about the radios, the new radios. So Stuart and I have talked a little bit about this new system for radios. We were supposed to put a repeater on, but I think that a whole new radio system would be better instead of just putting a Band-Aid. I'm working with Stu to get exact prices on how much it would cost for all the vehicles instead of just doing one truck at a time or a couple trucks for every year. If we can just if there's any extra money, maybe we can move it around and just outfit the radios. The radios now, some parts of town, you can't even hear. It's a safety issue with plowing snow.
This came up after Troy was here, but just before Troy was here. Derek had presented the radio repeater as one of his CIP projects, and it was just to put a repeater on the Willington Hill antenna, and that they believed would then, it wouldn't fix our problem, not being able to have communication within our vehicles all over town, but it would make it a little bit less. So once more knowledgeable people started participating in that conversation, they had some other suggestions that they thought would be no cost to us, but the radio, you would then have to use their radios, and that's where the cost comes in. So Troy inherited a project, but we believe there may be a better solution, but what we didn't do was fund for that, so that may be a factor. So I asked him to get exact quotes as exact as we can, so that we can figure out what was already set for the partial project and what we would need and how we could do that, as opposed to spending $15,000 to put a Band-Aid on the problem. That would just continue to snowball. If we can, if it involves spending a little bit more, how we could possibly do that to make it so that when our crews are out all over town, they can actually communicate with each other. So that's where he's at now, so he's working on it.
And other than that, we started grading the dirt roads. I know there's been numerous complaints, but unfortunately, the weather is, you can't grade mud, so, but we've been out there, we've done Trask, Daleville, and, Nicollet?
Nicollet, yes.
Yeah, so that was done today, and we'll continue doing them as the weather.
Yeah, this weekend certainly couldn't have helped with
Yeah.
at all.
And that's about it.
All right, well, I thank you, sir. Any other public works questions? Okay. So the first item under new business is resolution adoption on the Capital Region Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is an update of the plan through 2024, correct? So we need to adopt the plan, and Scott, I do not want to pick Nadi.
No, that's a different Scott.
It's a different Scott?
Yes.
Oh.
We did a lot of juggling. I'm just
Okay.
Scott Showcat.
Okay, well, I apologize. Is here to answer any of the questions that we have regarding the update to a plan that we've already adopted. So I think I'll start by reading the resolution that we would then have to vote on after questions are. So it's a certificate of adoption, Town of WIllington Board of Selectmen, a resolution adopting the Capital Region Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2019 through 2024. Whereas the Town of WIllington has historically experienced severe damage from natural hazards, and it continues to be vulnerable to the effects of those natural hazards profiled in the plan, e.g. flooding, high wind, thunderstorm, winter storms, earthquakes, droughts, dam failure, and wildfires, resulting in loss of property and life, economic hardship, and threats to public health and safety. And whereas the WIllington Board of Selectmen approved the previous version of the plan in 2014, and whereas the Town of WIllington and Capital Region Council of Governments developed and received conditional approval from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2019 through 2024 under the requirements of 44 CFR 201.6, and whereas public and committee meetings were held and public input was sought in 2017 and 2018 regarding the development and review of the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2019 through 2024, and whereas the plan specifically addresses hazard mitigation strategies and plan maintenance procedures for the Town of WIllington, and whereas the plan recommends several hazard mitigation actions projects that will provide mitigation for specific natural hazards that impact the Town of WIllington with the effect of protecting people and property and loss associated with those hazards. And whereas adoption of this plan will make the Town of WIllington eligible for funding to alleviate the impacts of future hazards, now therefore it be resolved by the Board of Selectmen, the plan is hereby adopted as an official plan of the Town of WIllington. The respective officials identified in the mitigation strategy of the plan are hereby directed to pursue implementation of the recommended actions assigned to them. Future revisions and plan maintenance required by 44 CFR 201.6 and FEMA are hereby adopted as part of the resolution for a period of 5 years from the date of this resolution. An annual report on the progress of the implementation elements of the plan shall be presented to the Board of Selectmen. Once a vote is taken, it will be adopted this day, May 2019, by the Board of Selectmen. So Scott, I will give the floor to you if there's anything specific you would want to share, if anyone has any questions regarding the plan.
I'm happy to take any questions. I can give a little more
Give
overview.
a little bit overview, that would
Yeah.
be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so just less than 2 years ago, the Capital Region Council of Governments got a grant through the State Emergency Management Agency, which was a sub-grant to FEMA, to do this update of the plan. These plans and these updates are required every 5 years under the Federal Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. And the idea is to prevent FEMA from coming in and doling out money to help recover from disasters and then replacing the same culvert or the same home or the same whatever it is in kind and having to pay for it again down the road. So in the short version, and as I said, I'll be happy to answer any questions, is we did a detailed risk assessment for all of the communities in the capital region and then created an annex for each of the communities. There's participation, I believe, from Public Works, Planning, Emergency Management, and others in town here, and came up with a list of approximately 20 strategies and actions to address the vulnerabilities identified in the risk and vulnerability assessment. So essentially, the town is not on the hook to do those projects. They're projects that they've identified as good projects for the town. By adopting the plan, you'll be eligible for 3 different types of federal hazard mitigation grants: the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the Pre-Disaster Program, and the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program. All of those programs will pay for mitigation at 75% of the cost of the project. Mitigation ranges from regulatory and land use type items, enforcing a building code, replacing an undersized culvert with a larger culvert, to elevating a home that's repeatedly flooded, to the whole spectrum of projects, as long as the key is long-term actions, sustainable actions that reduce or eliminate the threat from whichever of the hazards that Erica read off from the resolution you're trying to address. So it's been a 2-year process. The plan was completed a few months ago. It went through an approval process at the state, and then it went to FEMA, and they've conditionally approved it. The condition is the adoption by the 35 or 36 municipalities in the COG.
Our EMD, who is Stuart Cobb, is part of the process and familiar with the plan and any implementation that would be necessary as well.
I have a spare copy of the annex, of your annex, and I'll leave it behind if anybody wants to
Thank
have a
you.
look at it.
Go ahead. Just identify yourself for the record.
Randy Belair, Willington, 170
Are you
Village Hill
looking
Road.
for Pat? Go
Yellow,
behind you, take a
green.
right and around the corner into that.
Scott, did you say there were 20 items identified for Willington?
Yes.
And how does that compare with other towns in the region?
I would say it's probably average. Some of the bigger towns or towns with more vulnerability have a few may have 100, a few may have 4 or 5. It's probably right about in the middle.
So where are those 20 documented? Are they accessible to the public?
Yep. Yeah,
In this
they're right
report?
here.
What's the destiny of that report? Is that going to get, it sounds like it's something that should be an addendum to the POCD perhaps. Unless there's a better home for it.
Perhaps, it would be a public document now here in the town.
You make a good point. One of the things that FEMA encourages, they're trying not to just have these standalone plans. They're trying to kind of institutionalize this into the community operations. So they strongly encourage integration with other plans, whether it doesn't have to be the POCD, but it could be a variety of other different planning
This
mechanisms.
was an update to a plan that we'd already adopted, so I think that should be part of the POCD to start with, but we can put it, certainly make sure that it's accessible on the website.
Well, it's news to me that this was going on. Was it 5 years ago that the plan was put together or just?
2014.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of the POCD. I mean, it gets reviewed every year and updated.
And I should know this, but I'm not crystal clear. I think there is language in this, that the state has added where you have to at least reference.
Yeah, every 10 years the
hazard
POCD is updated.
Right. But it gets reviewed every year for results against plan.
Correct.
So at least gets, looked at by planning and zoning. And you want to make this as visible as you can.
Stuart reviewed this, he's talking about in conjunction with the POCD. Yeah, no, Stuart definitely reviews this.
Yeah.
And we had meetings, gosh, that would be last spring. Maybe it was summer because Derek was here when
So the 20 things that are in your Scott would be presumably eligible for federal assistance?
Yes, you don't have to limit the plan to only things that are eligible for federal assistance. If there's good projects that happen to not be eligible for those programs, by putting them in the plan, you're identifying them as a community as things you want to do, and there are other funding sources. I always caution not to, even though it's a FEMA-driven requirement, the plan isn't limited only to the projects that would be fundable by FEMA, but most of them, or if not most of them, a lot of them are fundable under the 3 programs I mentioned.
So the obvious question, given that we have about $10 million worth of outstanding work in our plan of capital improvements, are any of those things likely to be eligible for funding through this medium?
I don't have an answer for you now, we can certainly look into that.
And things that are considered maintenance or routine
Right.
operations are not eligible.
Improvements to avoid hazard.
Right.
And I can't off the top think of anything on that plan that falls into that category, but
Like Village Hill Road, we had a long conversation about that. And
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right,
about,
Flooding
water
right.
on
problems.
that road, yeah.
yeah, I don't want to rule anything out that's on there. A lot of the things that are on for this year that I see in my head right now would they fall under some routine maintenance, but those items may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So,
Thank you.
Scott, I appreciate you for coming out. Again, just making the rounds to multiple municipalities.
My pleasure. It's a nice day for a ride.
Yes, so I move that we adopt the resolution adopting the Capital Region Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan update as presented 2019 through 2024.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item of business is to award the custodial contract, and that's for the TOB, Public Works, and the Old Town Hall.
I need to apologize to the selectmen because I sent you guys an email on Friday, but it was incorrect with the amount. H&S is actually a little bit higher than Opportunity Works.
Do they have those numbers that I have here? Or-
Yeah, they do, but I
Okay.
broke it down.
Right, on there.
Incorrectly, so,
So you can see that Robin reported to us that we solicited 4 bids. Fluff and Dust did not respond. Thompson's Cleaning Service declined to bid, stating they didn't want to take the job from a current vendor. We did receive bids from Opportunity Works and from H&S Carpet and Janitorial Service. They are our current vendor. H&S. So the grand totals are H&S would be annually $16,680, and Opportunity Works would be $16,272.94. So Opportunity Works is roughly $400 less annually. We have, Robin can speak to longer, and I believe they also use them at the senior center as well. In my time here, I have not had a problem with them. The only time they didn't come, we didn't expect them, was when it snowed. We don't really expect them out in some of those storms, but then have, immediately come and, Troy, I don't know if you can speak to your level, what we think. Is that appropriate for us to converse on, or are we going just by numbers? How you felt that they've been doing in your short time?
Yeah, I mean, everything seems to be done in what they're supposed to do. Yeah, I don't have an issue with who's doing it now, there's no problem with that.
And I think for years we had lots of issues
Well,
with,
we've always gone with the lowest bidder, and we've had nothing but problems. We fired 2 out of 3 that we've had since I've been here.
yeah, and they kind of come in 18, 19 months, I've seen him one time. And it was an unusual time for him to be here, but again, making up for time after snow and unusual snowfalls. So the recommendation then from Robin, based on those, from the bids we received, is staying with H&S.
Robin's the one who deals with them, so
And you're staying flat, they didn't go up the same thing.
I tend to trust her judgment.
I do as well, and again, we can, Troy and I can speak to it, that they've been doing the job which we have. It is interesting, nice that they're able to maintain the same level of services and cost to us. So although there is a $400 difference, there is something to be said for continuity of service and that we are happy with their service. If anyone wants to make a motion to award.
I'll make a motion to award H&S Carpet and Janitorial Services the cleaning service contract for the town of WIllington. No, I don't have the
That's
thing in front of me. For $16,680.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So I thank you to those who did bid. And thank you, Robin, for doing that. And the next item is the 2019 through 2024 copier lease, hot off the presses. All right, so Donna's been working diligently on our it's time for new copiers. And if you work with them here, you can see why. They only last a certain amount of years.
She said that, she gave me a lowdown, because you were in the meeting.
Yes.
She said the pricing is, contract pricing from US Communities. It's a national bid list. So it's basically the state list. We're continuing with ACT Group, that's who we have now. We are buying out 3 of the copiers that we have from this lease right now. The town clerks and the superintendents, they're gonna stay as is. The selectmen's copier, we're buying that out, but we're moving it to the senior center and they're discarding the senior center copier.
And that's what they did before, they kind of, we bought one out and moved it down there for them.
They're offering us a lower price per month, for the cost for copy and maintenance or whatever. And you guys don't need to make a motion, it's just,
FYI. So Donna did work hard with them to get that, we are buying out, the schools are replacing what they have with, identical new. We changed the configuration here, so we were able to go from 5 to 3, and then keep those 3 older units. The difference is, right now, we have 1 color copier in this building, and that has all the bells and whistles and does everything, and it's downstairs. Which, if you can imagine, in the course of your day, it's not always convenient. When you set something to print and you need to print it in color, and, Robin has to run all the way downstairs only to find that it didn't print, and it didn't do what it was supposed to, and back upstairs. So we were able to find a way to change the configuration, and maintain, the cost. So it can only improve our workflow during the day, which I think is important. So, and by keeping those 3 copiers that we do have, we were gonna go from 5 to 3, and the superintendent's office was gonna share it down here, and we were just gonna have 1 on the main floor, now we'll still be able to have 2, and it will cost us more, which is nice.
Okay.
The town clerks will be able to stay there.
Right.
Because we'll buy it out at fair market value, which they were able to work into the contract without us paying more money for our new copiers. We're getting, in this building, we're getting 3 brand new copiers and keeping 3 old and maintaining the same cost we were with the last lease, which I did not believe would be the case. So the total lease, monthly lease is $1,601.26. Any questions? Okay. And you'll see before you a suggested appointment to the Youth Services Advisory Board, Sydney Collins. Has expressed interest. She's been working with Jenny for some time now, been pretty active with the youth services and human services as a whole, which has been great. So I move to appoint Sydney Collins as a non-voting under 21 member of the Youth Services Advisory Board, filling a vacancy effective May 6th, 2019, expiring May 5th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a question, how filled up are we on that? Do we have
And there's 2 vacancies, library and police.
So is it typically someone from the library board? Or do you know they're struggling over there? Yeah, well, their 6-year term certainly is one more deterrent, but that's another level. Hopefully they can work that out. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, the exploratory flag committee, so a little bit of an update. Flag money has been coming in. Robin has been collecting that. So Phil Monty got back to us that unless Robin knows something new, he was hoping to get the last permissions from homeowners from 3 on Route 74.
He's down to 1 now.
Down to 1, okay. And as of,
All but 2, sorry. All but
Okay.
2.
and as of Friday, we had 13 flag donations, but I saw some envelopes on Robin's desk today.
Yeah, I think he said 22, because he has some, and I got a couple more in.
And the total number was
He needs
35.
34, so he wanted to ask for additional. But is the BJ's information on there?
Yes.
too?
So
Okay.
he stopped at BJ's in Manchester, asked about flags. They gave him a $25 card for 1 and 10% off for 5 additional. What we didn't do was budget for purchasing any. The discussion we had was that as long as they were all donated. So if, I guess, the question would be if they are short the 35, then we would just be short that many number and could spread them out. This is the case because there was no budgeted funds to purchase the others. While I think it's a wonderful idea in these uncertain times, I don't know that, we could just be adding to the budget. That was one of our concerns we had from the beginning, so that's why it felt different.
So we're short now, we need 35, and we have,
He said 34, and we have 22.
22, so they're pretty close.
oh, short. We should be able to make that up.
Well, I think I told him I would put a plug in the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll
you plug in the minutes and we'll share something on our social media again. We can, put something out. Maybe, I don't know if any of them will be willing today. That might be a good spot to happen. If nothing else, they could just post a sign up, maybe even
Well, he's planning on putting them up next Saturday.
right before Memorial Day
Yeah.
weekend.
He's gonna purchase them on Monday and then put them up.
One of the big questions we had was specifically about our concerns about putting them on poles that did not belong to us.
Oh, yeah, he talked to Eversource too. I think that's in there too. isn't it?
Well,
Oh,
no, you had asked him to get back, but he didn't mention Eversource.
yeah, he talked to Kevin Wickhouse, and Kevin, basically said that they can't really say, yes, you can do it, but you can't say no either, they don't know, kind of thing, so.
If you, is this one of those, if you better to,
Just do it and not say it.
it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to give permission.
Yes. Which is why we.
But they didn't say like, It wasn't like a hard no, I can't remember what we said. That was from last week.
Okay.
You need a quote?
All right,
Make
so
this quote.
hopefully they'll have some luck in getting up the rest of
He
them.
emailed me, but I didn't get the email, so I took notes.
Okay, anything that I didn't share?
BJ's.
Thank you, Robin. And again, this is something that we talked about, we took on as long as it wasn't a lot, but the responsibility of that money coming somewhere fell to someone, and I guess we can, we all know now Robin's one answering the question, she's been the one taking in the money, the donations. The money, it comes into us, so that it has to go out, to purchase the flags too. So there is a little bit of bookkeeping on our side, and someone to do the work, so Robin, the office manager wants to pick something else extra up to an already full plate, so I appreciate that as well. All right, the next item was a Willington Hill Fire Department property purchase request. I'm gonna talk to them. So they came to this board, basically talking about it, and we made no action. At the last Board of Finance meeting, immediately following the budget hearing, they had sent a letter to the Board of Finance that did not come to the Board of Selectmen. That was, I don't know that I would say it was a hard and fast request, but it was very clear in there. They were looking for $50,000, and the letter spoke to $50,000 from town's money and $300,000 of Willington Hill Fire Association money, so this is the private side of the fire department. And then also they'd be looking for money to maintain, to mow the lawns, for some other things. There was no commitment and no discussion from the Board of Finance, which is appropriate because it would have to start from here, and then we'd have to go to a town meeting in order to appropriate that kind of money. So I was happy to see that nothing was done there. What was done was the Board of Finance decided to appoint 2 people from their board and to sit in on discussions, to work with the Board of Selectmen, who wasn't currently working on it, and the fire department in their discussions to kind of get some unanswered questions answered. So there's been 2 meetings since that meeting. The first was Randy, and Randy, feel free to chime in during this discussion. Randy was one representative, as was Bill Rankin, and then Mike McCoo representing not the Board of Finance, but the Board of, not the Board of Finance, but the Fire Department. We all met with gentlemen from the USDA to talk about their loan grant program. And how they could qualify. The original discussion was how they could qualify to get funding to purchase the land, but it quickly evolved from there. And one of the things that came about is the grant portion of it wouldn't really help. So there's $137,000 total in grant money through that program for the entire state. So there's a cap of $50,000 per project, and we would be eligible for 35% of that. And that's based on our demographics and how we qualify. So they wouldn't be looking at grant money, they'd be looking at a loan. The loan wouldn't be to purchase the land, the loan would be to put a firehouse there. So we had lots of discussions around that. My biggest takeaway was 2 things. The town has to own the property in order to even apply for the loan through the USDA, and it could be up to a 40-year loan. So it gives us an avenue for that. The second was the town hasn't made any decisions on building a firehouse. So I think the town, wouldn't own this property as of right now, would have no ownership because we've moved in no direction to purchase it. And we haven't said, yes, in fact, we're ready to build a firehouse there. So they really gave us background information so that if and when we're at that point, we can move in that direction. And it was very helpful. We just have lots of discussions to have on our side of the table before we go back to them, but it was very informative. Anything with that meeting, Randy, that?
Yeah, the reason the Board of Finance, voted to appoint 2 of us was to provide additional resource to the selectmen, because there's an awful lot of data that needs to be gone through, a lot of questions to answer. even begin to come to any kind of a decision of how the town should move forward in supporting the fire department in this initiative. So we brought that extra resource on primarily for that reason, but perhaps more importantly, there's 2 milestones in the purchase agreement that the Wellington Hill Fire Department has put together with a realtor. There's a 60-day milestone and a 120-day. That sounds like a lot of time, but at this last meeting we had, which was a couple of hours long, we articulated all of from the selectmen's perspective and the Board of Finance perspective, all the hurdles, all the questions that are going to have to be answered, all the different topics that are going to have to be addressed in some detail before we could have an intelligent discussion with the Board of Finance or you guys, or the fire department could actually have that discussion and answer your questions moving forward. I think, Erica, you would agree, our primary advice to the chiefs were, go back to the realtor, explain to them, the magnitude of the work that needs to be done for the town to move on this in supporting the fire department and solicit some additional time.
Right.
And I think they took that to heart and they'll move forward on it. And Mike McCoo is doing an awful lot of the legwork behind the scenes on this thing. It's a very heavy burden to address all of those issues. And again, the finance board members, and I'm sure Erica, we're willing to help any way we can. Just reach out to us, tell us what you need, and we'll try and turn it around quickly.
The first hurdle I had, so they had 60 days to get back their deposit, like if they walked away from the deal and nothing lost, they got it all back. What came out of that, not here when they met with us, but at the Board of Finance meeting, was they signed that agreement on, I believe it was March 25th. So we're looking at a little over 2 weeks before that first 60 days is up, where they would be locked in. One of the suggestions that we gave to them was they should want some conditions on any sale, specifically contingency revolving around crumbling foundations, because the date of the parsonage, the rectory, is right in the dates that we're looking at, specifically for homes that could be affected. So at the very least, I think they would need to start with a visual inspection. Some of those come at cost that they have not planned for. So we talked to them about some of the reasons why they might want to ask for an extension on that time frame from the realtor. So we gave them the advice, don't know what they've done with it at this point. The second meeting we attended was last Monday, the 29th, where the fire department had, their president and their chief had a meeting with the land use department. And it was not a public meeting, so it wasn't noticed. They allowed us to sit in, 2 members from them and myself allowed us to sit in on the meeting, where Mike D'Amato, our zoning agent, and Jim Rupert spoke to them about some ways in which they could use the property that may or may not have fit into what their plan was. The biggest takeaway I got from that was that they were hoping to offset some of the cost and to build back up their monies by renting the house. Because of the way it was permitted as an accessory use to the church. They could not do that as long as it remained one parcel. They would have to split the land, which was certainly an option, and they felt if they wanted to down the road put a firehouse, it wouldn't be enough land. So that's something they had to think about from there. The other was that there were going to be some extra costs associated with changing the special permits that would go along with the use in which it would have once it was part of the fire department. And this was all before putting a firehouse on it. So I think there were probably a lot more costs associated than I think they had anticipated. And certainly, as we know, they at least mentioned that they would be using all of their funds to make the purchase, so there wasn't anything left over. So that's where they stand as far as we know, what they've done behind the scenes to extend those. We're unaware. At this point, the town is not committed to or voted to put money in, so they're not obligated to share with us, although it's kind of open. They did indicate that town money aside, they still wanted to go forward with the purchase. But, I did caution them that we are having a referendum, I then said a week from now, and, as we know tomorrow, and there were no monies in their budget as presented to support the electricity, anything that went on with maintenance of a new piece of property and 2 new buildings. And that once again, doesn't mean things can't change, but as things sit, the town has an agreement for services with Willington Hill Fire Department, and that land was being purchased by Willington Hill Fire Association. And so, once again, I was just concerned with, we're talking about 2 different entities and mixing money that the town has an agreement for services with one to another. We want to make sure we did that correctly before the town agreed to give them funds. Doesn't mean we couldn't change it, but right now we weren't set to fund Willington Hill Fire Association. So that's my update. Do you have anything you'd like to
Yeah, I
add?
would just say that I think we smoked out a number of expenses that they likely would incur to move forward for purchasing the property and using it in the interim the way they hoped they would be able to use it. Another one that Jim Looper brought forward was an architectural study would have to be done. That's not an inexpensive thing to do. So when you add up all of these bits and pieces of additional expense, it's a significant headwind for the fire department to approach on their own. It's not just the $350,000 to buy the property.
That gets them the property, and then it can just sit there till they can afford to do the other things with it, realistically.
So, I mean, from my perspective, like, this isn't our decision to make, right? Like, they do what they're gonna
Correct.
do regarding the purchase of the property.
They may well.
So,
We have,
I mean, we don't have a decision to make
No.
until we have a decision to make.
Correct.
So I don't even know how to respond to any of that.
I mean, if you have any
Because-
questions, we could try to
Well,
answer
the
what
ball
we
is in
do.
their court.
It is.
You know,
Yeah.
they need to come back.
And that's why
Answering all these
I asked the
questions.
question, do you plan to move forward no matter what the town does? Because
Yeah.
there's no formal request before the town at this point.
Yeah, there's nothing for us to
Nothing
say
for
or
us
do
to
other
say.
than hear this and then go, okay.
And quite
We'll
honestly,
see.
at this point, we had heard it and said, while we think that's great, we're not in a position to, spend that money. But then the Board of Finance kind of set an edict that we're gonna appoint 2 people and they're gonna work with the Board of Selectmen on this, but we weren't really working. So it was good to be part of the conversation and kind of hear what some of the options were. It was eye-opening with the USDA meeting, which sounded like it could be beneficial, but the key takeaway is, in order for them to give you money, it has to be the town. So it can't be they own it, and unless if the town owns it, the town's gonna use the property how the town sees fit, right? And so, I don't know that that's where they wanna go yet. They want, the fire department, or the fire association wants the property, and they have a specific use for it, and it's not ours to say yes or no at this point. John?
Well, for one thing, we're not even sure that we know what specific use they want one for, but we're not even sure that the rest of the town is going to agree that,
That is correct.
so it's really premature to buy this property. Now, if I understand it as of May 27th or thereabouts, they have to either drop the plan
Right,
or,
or they move forward with, then they have 60 days to close.
and then they have 60 days to close.
But they're going to, I believe, go forward and put some contingencies in place.
Well, we hope that they're
Maybe
gonna,
guarantee the deposit comes back because of these many issues that have.
I mean,
to
we
be
advised them
reasonably
to,
addressed.
but we don't know if they actually did those, but it's, at this point, it's, it's their risk.
Because once they go past May 27th, then they
They have money to lose, unless they put some,
and how much are they going to have to lose? Is there a deposit that they have to put in?
they did make a deposit, I haven't seen the exact terms of
Yeah,
that agreement,
they
so
haven't
I,
shared that.
so I couldn't say for sure. They have alluded to the fact that they would lose their deposit, and I don't know if there's anything other than that, but I hope that they heard in the different meetings that we had and all of the different things that were talked about, that they had some hurdles to overcome before they made the purchase. And a lot of the guidance that Mike had given them initially, he was giving them and said, you need to get some of these unknowns known before you make an offer, but they had already made the offer before they started the discussion. So if they heard what we suggested, then they went back and made some adjustments to their contract. We can only hope that they did, but we don't really know. So it is very possible that they plan to go forward with the purchase, and of which the town may or may not be involved in.
To put it plainly, we're trying to help them not shoot themselves in the
Right.
foot by buying,
Right.
Well, thanks.
property and finding out it's not gonna work out, the town can't support it in the long run. what was driving the urgency is the price came down by 50% from $600,000 or $700,000 to $350,000. It hasn't had any interest from other, buyers in about 2 years, something like that. So they probably, I gotta believe the realtor's gonna be flexible and give them whatever time they need to make the purchase. But if they don't purchase it for whatever reason, somebody could come along and buy it. So it's kind of, would be a lost opportunity.
They're kind of taking a risk by letting it go, hoping that there isn't someone else out there. But, my advice is the town is not committed to a new fire department in X amount of time on
Or that
to either
location.
department or
Or
that
even that
location.
location.
That, that's still something that has to be answered. So it's a hefty assumption to make that if we buy the land, the town is then going to fund it and or put a firehouse here. No one is saying no, but no one has said yes either. So they are purchasing with a risk. But I think what I heard Chief Snyder say when he came here was that then if that didn't work out, he felt like they could turn around and sell it. If they can, then okay, but that's a risky move.
They could end up losing money.
They could.
That's right.
I understand their intent, it's not our decision.
Right, so I have a little bit of frustration that we keep having the same conversation over again, because there's nothing for us to decide, and there's nothing for us to do, and not that we can't have these important conversations, but we've done that, and I think the ball is, like you said, in their court. There's no decision for us to make. We've given them all the information that they need. They know that there's no commitment from the town. We've made it clear that we can't give them any money or anything, so I don't know what we gain by continuing to have the conversation about it at this point, other than to say good luck and hope maybe this will work out for you and maybe it won't.
I think it's just important.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I don't know, we've had the conversation a few times now.
We
I
did.
don't know what else we can do.
It's always important to get the, our side of the facts now made public and how we feel, that we're not discouraging them from or encouraging them, but here's what we took away from it. We weren't moving on it, we weren't doing anything, and then kind of were encouraged by the Board of Finance, so we looked at the questions, and so that's our information. They may or may not move forward. We may or may not see them come before us with a request, and then we would deal with it at that point.
I don't know if we can project, which I think we really have to, if they buy it with the idea that, well, once they bought it, then we'll have to build something there.
Shouldn't make that assumption.
I would hope they would not make that assumption.
It's up to the town.
Because first of all, we have no plans to build a new firehouse. And if we do in the future, in my opinion, it would be unlikely that we would want to put the firehouse there. It would be in my opinion, we would probably want to find a more centralized place to put the new firehouse. So even they're buying it with the idea that if we decide we're going to build it, we're going to have to put it there, and we don't. So they might still be stuck with a piece. And that might be 10 years down the road. And if it's 10 years down the road and they've spent all their money on this piece of land, where are they going to get money, basically?
Well, so the conversations were, pretty honest, that I think
Very
they
candid
think, I think
conversation.
they're hoping that the town is going to help them maintain it. And I said, I can tell you that in this fiscal year, there is no funding for that. You came forth with a budget that did not include taking care of a piece of property that you don't own. So there are no funds for that, and that would require a new request. And again, I have concerns about a request for a private entity that the town does not have a contract with asking for funds. So there's some things in there, but yes, there could easily be said they're hoping that if we buy the purchase, then we will build the firehouse there. And I have asked for some information on call data so that we can take a look with all of the other studies we have on fire departments and see if the call data will show us, at least on a map, whereabouts a firehouse should be, when the town is ready to have discussions about that. So they certainly have, they've been given lots of information from us, and I don't know if and when we'll hear back from them.
Hopefully soon.
Hopefully, we may see them next week at the Board of Finance meeting, they may go back to that or to have the discussion. But, we've said before, it's important to know that's not the place to go to ask for the money. That's not how the process works. But I don't know that that will stop them.
Like I said, to your point about what more can we do, I think this is a collaborative effort that everybody benefits from by resourcing it, with folks who can ask good, solid questions to cover some very difficult and challenging questions that are ultimately going to need to be answered. Given the history of Lincoln Hill Fire Department, the amount of money that they've spent, their own money to put additions on the firehouse and, secure equipment, I'm sure you're very familiar with all that. There's a lot of goodwill that's come from that group to benefit to the town. This is an opportunity to give back. The building department, has been very gracious in giving time to work with them, and the Board of Finance and yourself, so I'm sure it's very much appreciated. But the facts will dictate where we go in the future when we get the answers to these many questions.
All right.
But I think it's a good investment in yourselves, time-wise.
So far, that's all we put in. All right, Randy, thank you so much for your input. The next item was discussing the water, I should say potential water hookup on Old Farms Road. So we had a request from a resident, and we agreed to let them pursue. So in thinking about that, we have not heard back from that homeowner at all in this time frame as to connecting. Are you surprised by that?
I thought I remembered that we had
So we had a meeting and we said,
a communication.
if
from
he
him.
would, if he so wanted. We've not had a communication from him after that meeting, where if he so wanted to hook up.
Well, he sent you some stuff. He gave you that packet.
Okay.
Paperwork. Yeah, it was after the meeting, what is it, when you guys voted on?
So one of the things I was thinking is that we should have in place a clear procedure in which, and one of them was protecting the town from liability of hooking up. Every building we hooked up to our water supply was a town building. So we knew the ins and the outs, we knew what was in each building, we knew the water usage in all of those buildings. That there's an unknown with an unknown building. And so some of my things were, the first was to have the assessor go out and take a look at the home. We want to make sure that that the property card is up to date, so that if it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, that we know that's the amount of water we're looking to hook up, that it's not suddenly a 6-bedroom, 5-bath home. And I'm using some hypothetical numbers here. That we know that what we are hooking into is exactly what we believe it to be. And that would give us the answer to usage-wise, and our assessor could certainly go out there and do that if we didn't feel that was inappropriate to ask of any person at any point that was allowed to hook up to. Because again, every other building before they were connected, we knew all of those variables. And so we wouldn't be inadequately servicing something that then we'd be on the hook for. So
I think at minimum, that should be required, that there be some sort of inspection or to know for a fact, especially if this is going to be part of a water system that's connected to other properties and impact other residents and individuals in town. Yeah.
any thoughts?
Yeah.
I have a copy of my desk.
Yeah. I thought I had kept it, but, he sent us something, some
Like a
point,
packet.
a packet, of the proposal to proceed. And this was back closer
Maybe all
to,
you guys for copy.
yeah.
Are you sure that was after the meeting
It
though?
was- Right,
Yeah,
was
it was
after the
after, it
meeting?
was after you guys voted and they were coming in again. It was like the next day, or like
Couple days,
within
yeah.
a
All
week's
right, I'll take
time.
another look at that. But are you opposed to us having the assessor, asking the assessor to go out to make sure the property card is? What we're asking for is to make sure what we know the amount of water it's gonna be on, so that it's adequate, right? So if we get 3, if we were to do this for other residents, then we know we're gonna have to at some point get close to our capacity of that line and then have to look at what we did with that. And then if what we're putting in isn't, what we're anticipating the usage being doesn't match.
Okay.
Again, it's not like there's a hotel there, we can see the home, but wanting to make sure everything is what we believe it to be, so that we can properly plan for usage on the water line.
Okay.
All right, if you recall at our last meeting, I talked to you all about the salaried employee pay, and Department of Labor had come to us and told us we had to make a change. So Donna and Amanda and I came up with a plan. We worked with someone from the Department of Labor, worked through lots of kinks and questions, had a meeting with the salaried employees, took their feedback because this directly impacts them. What we got back from them was a little bit shift on the plan that we had suggested in order to implement that, and that was to take, there would have been a holdback, so the first pay period of the next fiscal year 2019-20, they would have missed. So the first pay check would have been on July 18th. So to avoid them going 4 weeks without a paycheck, we agreed to a compromise of taking the first 4 pay periods and dividing it up over 5 paychecks. Still the same amount of money, just to kind of lessen the hurt, because for some people, not getting a paycheck at all was significant. It could be life-changing to some people, and we recognize that. So we put the plan in place. I sent a communication, if you can see the letter, where we spelled everything out to Department of Labor, and I sent that on the 25th, on Monday, last Monday the 29th, on Thomas Wydra, who's the Director of Wage and Workplace Standards, reviewed our proposed plan and believed it to be perfectly acceptable. So they commended us for taking a proactive approach, which says to me, when we talked about this with the investigator that we worked with, was, if you don't come up with a plan, we will. So we found a way that it didn't hurt as much. The hurt is still there for people. At the end of the fiscal year, they will have still made the same salary and the same amount of money. There's a shift in when it was, how it was being delivered, and to anyone who doesn't make a large paycheck, it could be significant. It does impact the 2 of you as well, all 3 of us
Well,
as well.
I'm, I don't know, kind of have a problem getting my brain around this.
Okay.
Apparently, we've paid everybody, over the course of the fiscal year, we've paid everybody
The right amount.
overpaid.
We didn't overpay.
We did.
So when you started, okay, so I'll use mine, for instance, so we can give you the dates. I started on the Tuesday here.
Right,
I got paid that week. I worked 2 days and got a paycheck
okay.
for 2 weeks pay. So I got paid ahead,
Oh, so then this has been how it's always been?
yes,
Okay.
for forever, as long as anyone here can tell me, and that is not the way in which to do it. The
Well, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, you know.
What you're saying now
It's
makes
terrible.
sense.
So in order to, what we did was take your annual salary,
Yeah.
divide it up over the number of pay periods in the year, and you got paid X amount at each pay period. So within the fiscal year, you got all your money, and we took the amount and we made it fit into our box. That's not how it's supposed to be done.
Now it makes sense now, for somebody who worked here for 4 years, and then left, that means they got an extra paid an extra pay period.
It depends on when they left. So if let's say, this week is a pay week, right? So if I am a salaried employee here and I get paid this Thursday, I'm paid through next Friday. If I quit on Friday, we just paid you 5 days that you didn't work.
Okay.
So the way you look at it is you got a big check when you started and hadn't worked at all. You got a big check, walking in the door.
Yeah,
And so it evens out in the end, but that doesn't help.
yeah. Well, every other
Right,
place I've
the
ever
provider
worked,
at home, there's a holdback.
the first thing they ever tell you is, be aware you won't get a
That's
paycheck for 2 weeks or whatever the people.
And not here, we are
And
very
we haven't done
generous.
that. We've been really nice people.
We have been really nice people.
Okay.
I
So
cannot
that
find,
makes sense.
I
Okay.
cannot find an instance in the most recent past where it has hurt us. As in somebody walked away with a week, but that doesn't mean it can't happen, so we're certainly at risk.
Even if it did happen.
It makes it, right, but that's not why we moved forward with it. We were really given an edict from Department of Labor that once they knew how we were doing it, it became evident to them that it was the incorrect way. And we weren't sure that we were an anomaly that they thought we were, especially after meeting with Donna and Amanda and I meeting with them, and after calling multiple towns to see how they did it, especially small towns. Yeah, we weren't. We were the odd man out. And so we were making an arrangement to kind of split that first paycheck and find ways to do it. And this came about discussion from our staff. And they found a way that it certainly doesn't make it better, but it softens the hurt a little bit. So they'll take their first four pay periods divided over 5. So they'll get a less paycheck, and that means the 2 of you as well. So your first regular looking pay period will be this last one on your list, pay period 6, in September. Right, so I want to thank Donna and Amanda for all of their work on that. And from this point on, when someone starts, they will know when they get paid will correlate with when they have worked.
Smart.
Yes. Who knew? All right. I'll give you an update on the revenue collector. We've still just received one resume, which I shared with all of you. We had some discussions, or you have allowed me to bring someone in the interim, and they're not hired as the tax collector, but as interim temporary staff in our tax department. When Robin reached out to you about that, I had one option. By the next morning, I had 2. So two's better than one, and one was better than none. So beginning this evening, Kelsey Allard, who is the tax collector in Franklin, has started with us. She'll work up to 10 hours a week. She may not need that much, and she will be here Monday nights, and the others will be hours in which we're closed. And then we hope to have a letter with Elizabeth Jacobs, who is assistant tax collector in Manchester. So this is going to be like a cakewalk to her. She came in this evening. She and Kelsey were able to speak as Kelsey started this evening and work with Janice, and they will. We are not behind the 8 ball now, and we will be prepared for tax season. So I am grateful for their assistance. Walter, our assessor, asked if he could help in any way and share, communicate with anyone he knew, and he did, and that's how we ended up with Beth Jacobs. He spoke with the finance director in Manchester, who he knows well, and he put something out to his staff, and they, came right out. We are not unusual, other people are having the same problems, and so I'm thankful for their willingness to help and jump right in, and very seasoned. Elizabeth has been a collector since the early 90s, and she is a certified collector. Kelsey is not certified, although she's doing the job there, and she's also helping out in Hampton, is there without a tax collector as well. So Janice has been doing a great job. She just was only given so many tools when she got here. But she'll be able to continue on that work as an assistant adequately while we get things out. And then we have to decide where we want to go with our search that really has resulted in nothing. I did say to you that I would look at other options. I reached out to Ashford, and at this point, they're not interested in sharing a service. It just doesn't benefit them right now. They only have a tax collector. She hires temporary help during the busy season. So there is only one of her to split here. So if that changes down the road, they'd be open to discussion, but right now, it just isn't something they were at, so we, we're going to, it's not in the Chronicle anymore, rather, correct? It's long out of the Chronicle, although we've left it open on our website and on the tax collectors, CTF, the tax collector site, and it's open until filled. So they have both seen it off that site as well. And Lisa has still continued to make herself available to questions to Janice, which I appreciate, and with those coming in to help us, which again, I appreciate her. She certainly has her own situation in Summers, but is still willing to answer questions about here. So I appreciate that. So any suggestions and or feedback, I'm open to it. So we thought it was about the number of hours in the full-time versus part-time, but that still didn't change. So that, that begs the question, where do we go from here? Are we expecting too much experience?
I think we know the answer to that question.
So,
We have to win the town lottery.
that is true.
Pay everything.
Pay everyone better. So I'm still, just because I found someone to help us in the interim doesn't mean I'm stopping the outlook to find something else for us permanently. So I'm on it. If you have any suggestions, please get back to me. All right, good and welfare. The referendum is tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. upstairs in the common room. I repeat, tomorrow is the referendum. We often hear people say, I didn't know, nobody told me. It's been in a notice in the paper, it's been in our minutes, we've talked about it, it's been on agendas, and it happens every year. So I'm not sure what else to do. Troy,
The signs will be out tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning,
Yes,
yeah. So, we will see. There is a question on there about a project at Region 19 that people may or may not be aware of. We cannot share anything other than the facts that were provided to us, so as not to persuade. So there are big information boards that will be in the voting room. And the town clerk's office has the actual document. If someone wants to read it, they can go there to reference it. There can just be no question. The poll workers will not be able to answer questions about it, so there is one question that's not your typical. So hopefully people will come out to vote. A lot of hard work and months of work went into preparing for this day, so a lot of vote. It's our April 19th. Numbers from Gypsy have come in. So during the month of April, they responded to 459 calls for service. The most notable are 4 accidents, 9 criminal investigations, 0 burglaries, 2 larcenies, and 444 non-reportable matters. In addition, the following motor vehicle enforcement: 1 DUI, 173 traffic citations, and 31 written warnings. We did have, after reading our minutes from last month, a resident that asked what the non-reportable matters were. So Robin provided them with the information to answer them. So other people may have the same question. Those non-reportable matters can be anything that they were called out for that didn't necessarily result in an infraction. You called a complaint about the noise at your neighbor's house and then come out and talk to you. Those sorts of matters as such. We've never gotten a real specific. But I guess if they're non-reportable,
Then
it's just
that
a
would
number of.
be appropriate.
It's appropriate.
Do you know how much money you got from the state?
I do not have that number in my packet, so I do not. I can check with the town treasurer to see what that is, but I don't have that
I'm
number.
asking you.
Yeah, that's where I get the number from. All the revenues come into the treasurer. And this Thursday, the 9th, at Center School at 6 p.m. I will correct the record as my time is off. There'll be a second community engagement event revolving the project, the school facility study, that will be at Center School in their all-purpose room. So, and the third one will be Saturday, May 18th. I believe that one it's upstairs at 10 a.m. and I believe they will be offering childcare
Maybe I can go.
Maybe you can go, so that people could.
7 o'clock on Thursday.
It's 7 PM, thank you Randy, it's 7 PM on Thursday at Center School All-Purpose Room. And then the 18th, let's see, I believe that's the one, I believe it's at 10
That's
AM.
10 a.m. on
10 AM.
it's a Saturday.
It is a Saturday, it's upstairs in the common room here. And we'll put that out on our social media as well as the school sharing that. So.
I too had Thursday's meeting at 6 PM.
Oh, see, 6 PM.
I don't know.
I thought it was 6 PM because I thought it was earlier, and I know it was there till 9 o'clock the last time, and in my head said I was there for 3 hours.
I
So-
thought you left at 6
Yeah,
last time.
because it was a Monday, and I left here early,
Yeah.
so I believe it's 6 PM.
That's what I got.
I bet if we went around the corner by the superintendent's office, there is a poster on the wall. So, we'll encourage people to attend that so that they can be part of the discussion to help the school board decide where they want to move in that direction. All right, anything else for good and welfare? Memorial, Willington Day is Saturday the 25th at River Road. I'll mention that again in our next meeting.
Oh,
The town calendar says 6, I stand corrected.
6 PM, okay, this is. Yes, Robin?
The VFW is looking for people veterans to march in the parade. They are looking for, I forgot, I'll put it in the minutes, so it's supposed to say, but to hold rifles and,
Oh, in their color guard,
Flags.
in their honor guard?
yeah, they're on.
In the
yeah.
honor guard?
Yes, they need 6 people,
So
so,
that's for Monday, May 27th.
yeah.
All right, anything else, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you, and I move to adjourn at 7:44.
Second.